Yeah, that was so. I mean, one of the other thoughts I had based off your last question, but also a couple of the podcasts that I've done recently, there's been this. We've all touched on the idea of like people being at the top of their game in whatever industry they're in. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you is like, you don't often think of like what it means. Like you mentioned Rebecca Lowe, you don't often think of what it means to be at the top of your game as
Yeah.
a anchor. What does that mean for like? What are the things that like that you notice with her, or like that you try to do when you were anchoring, or like what sorts of things like mark a top like sports anchor or sports reporter?
I think it's different for me with different sports and with different positions. I just think Rebecca Lowe does a great job of running the show. She is the quarterback of that team, and whoever is working on the sides, whether she's got both of the Robbies or whoever else she has there, she's getting them in and out of the questions quickly. She's getting into the commercial breaks. She's getting into the highlights. Back. She just has a great pacing about her, and I think that's something that you really have to work at. It comes naturally to a lot of folks, but you really have to work at that. And um, it's just something that I think she's really done a great job with. And it really depends, having, as I told somebody, I'll go back to the Musburger story. I'd listened to Brent Musburger forever, it seemed like, when he was hosting NFL Today on CBS years and years ago in the NFL when my uncle played. And then to hear him in your earpiece and to just hear how marvelously he described and saw things. And it just made you realize just how good this guy was. And I had a lot of people that I got to work with like that. And one of my favorites is a guy that you may know from being in sports in Washington, D.C. is a guy named Tim Brandt. And Tim Brandt was just marvelous to me. I had a bunch of games with him. In fact, I had probably the game that was the most difficult game I ever had to do. But Tim Brandt was just sensational. That game was Texas A&M years ago. At Texas A&M, they built this big log fire, it's a jamboree, and it crashed, and 12 youngsters died during that mishap. And I'll never forget, I was lucky enough to get the president from Texas A&M on with us before the game and before it started, and just I got him. I couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. And that was the first time we made a real public statement about what had taken place. And to have that opportunity to allow him that platform, and it was a network game, so it was all across the country, and to have that moment for him and for that school in such a difficult time meant a lot to me. It also meant a lot to me that the guy coaching the other team, Mike Brown, had become a dear friend. I mean, just really was sensational. And to have both of those situations, because Mike handled it like I'm not sure any other coach could have handled it. And it was a tough situation. And he told me years later, he said, if I look back now, we probably shouldn't have played the game. We got beat, but that wasn't the important thing. I just don't know if it was the right thing to play the game. And I think he's probably right. But hindsight's always perfect 2020. But that was a moving day that day, and just to be on the sidelines to do that was amazing. And Tim Brandt could not have been better to work with. I still think a lot of Tim Brandt.
Those situations seem to bring out the best in people that you don't see, like with the coach and the president. And so when you're there, you have to kind of allow your emotions to kind of be off to the side almost, because you've got to let them do them. Is that difficult in that situation, or had you had enough sort of experience by that time that you were like, no, this is his time to give the statement, or like walk me through that a little bit, because I can imagine not like the level of composure that you needed to have to get that done and to ask the right questions and to know when to lay off and let him talk and not interject, like all that stuff that's a lot.
We have a limited amount of time, and I told him that as I said, this might only be one question, just depending on how much, how long you go. And the guy directing was a guy named Bruce Clark, who I don't know how many games I did with Bruce. And Bruce said, all right, Chipper, you got him. here's what we're going to, it's coming to you. And, we got to hit the brake. So he said, you got to throw it to the brake. And I went, got it. So we had a very short window to get the president on, to get what he was going to say and then get to the break, because you had to get the game kicked off on time. So I had been in similar situations, but not to that degree and not that big a stage as like a network game, or you don't know how many eyes are watching, and you never think of that. I just wanted to try to give that president his opportunity to say what he felt like he needed to say, and for me to kind of get out of the way. And I can remember thanking him and telling him that I thought some prayers of everybody associated with the network, and I was kind of speaking for the network at that moment with you and all of Texas A&M. And then we went to the break, and I can remember that's somewhat how it was. I don't remember the exact verbiage, obviously, but I think that was the best I could have done at that moment. And I felt comfortable about it. He was very gracious and said, thank you for having us on. And I was more grateful that he would do that. And so that was powerful. But there's some funny things that happened too. I got one of my favorite ones is Nick Saban was the head coach of Michigan State. And they had a guy that was a receiver by the name of Plaxico Burress. You've probably heard of Plaxico.
I know him. Yeah, he used to play for the Steelers.
Yeah, Plaxico played in Michigan. He had 222 yards receiving, and they beat Michigan. It was a big deal. So Lloyd Carr was the head coach of Michigan, and I had had enough Michigan games and been around Lloyd enough. They had a quarterback that kind of got hurt in the first half. We didn't know if he was going to start the second half, and so Tim Brand again doing the game, and a guy named Mike Golick was doing color. You might have heard of Mike Golick. I mean, he's been around a little bit. So anyway, I said, I'll find out. So I got in the huddle with Michigan. they're in the huddle getting ready to start the second half. Got the mic, and I said, got him, Bruce, so please throw it down to me. Tim throws it down to me, and Lloyd Carr turns, and I said, Coach, will so-and-so start the second half? Yes, thank you. Threw it back up top. And they were all dying laughing. What were you doing in the middle of the huddle? I said, how else am I going to get to Lloyd Carr? That's who we needed to have to give us the answer. So, you do what you kind of have to do and chase folks down if you had to. I had to chase Frank Beamer down to Virginia Tech one game. He got caught in the middle of the field. And I'm out there grabbing him. I said, come on, coach. And, of course, I've known him as long as I've been in Richmond. And he's like, wherever you lead me, I'll go. Just get me out of this mess. So I'm pulling him. And some of those things are funny on the sidelines. The sidelines is a funny place because at that time, there weren't anybody else down there. There was nobody down there. You had no help. You didn't have anybody but you and a camera person. So you're trying to get a camera person. Say, all right, are you staying there? Or are you coming with me? And then you run out and you're about tackling these folks and pulling them back on the field with you or off the field or wherever you got to go to try to get this interview. And time again matters because, you got to either hit the next game or you're trying to hit back to the network. And it's that was kind of fun because you just never knew what you might get. And just kind of was some funny stories over the years. There really were, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world. Loved every minute of it.